Right, our second speaker this afternoon, Terry Hanley, Dr. Terry Hanley, as I understand. Wow. I first came across Terry, when did you do your pilot research, Terry?
I think it was 2004 was my initial.
So in 2004, I was part of Terry's pilot, Anne was part of Terry's pilot. Is there anybody else in this room who was part of your pilot, Terry?
I don't want to break confidentiality, but there are definitely a few people who...
And there are others of us. We know what we're talking about. Anyway, it gives me great pleasure. I've bumped into Terry at conferences since, and it gives me great pleasure now to hear the results of what was a long piece of research and a major piece of research, and it's going to be really, really good for all of us to understand whether or not counselling online works. So, over to you.
Okay, so I suppose I should add something to that in some ways, because I guess this is a separate project to the one that a number of people have been involved with. But I guess since 2004, I seem to have got sort of led down this research pathway. I'm now a lecturer at the University of Manchester, so this is very familiar turf here, and I remember doing my counsellor training here in these very rooms and having to do PD for a whole 2 days kind of here. So if I just break down or have some sort of weird episode, it's just me regressing slightly. So I do apologise for that in advance. But I guess today I'm sort of trying to be a bit crude in my headlines. I suppose I've put my title as Does Online Counselling Work? And it's sort of a purposefully provocative question. And before I sort of talk about what I did, I'm just interested to know what you think. So I can see that you're poised with the mixing desk. So I've turned this on now because I want to know: does online counselling work, and how do you know it works? So I'm going to pose that out as a question here, and if people online want to add anything, then that's fine. So is there any takers? Does it work?
I know it works because I've been a client online and it worked for me.
Cool, that's a good start. Ooh, that thing where you maybe I should let you move the microphone around, Jill.
I've worked online for 2 years with instant chat, and we do follow-ups after 3 months, 6 months and a year. And the clients who stay in counselling usually are still clean after a year. I work with gamblers, so.
Okay, cool. Have I turned it off?
Yeah.
So, what other sort of ideas have we got?
Yes, is the answer. Yes, it does work. Or something works online in terms of, especially the kind of the client group I work with are male survivors of sexual abuse. So there's something there that works, something about breaking a silence within an anonymity that also then can compel somebody to go face to face. So something works online. I'm not too sure. Does online counselling work? I don't know, but something works.
Cool, thank you, Dick. Okay, is there any other kind of people want to add anything? Is there anything in the chat room? You have a fan. Thanks, Sue. Dad, I'm very comfortable with online supervision, so... Okay. I'm not sure whether that was related to my question or not, but it's helpful in some shape or form. I'm also aware if I move beyond the speakers, I start feeding back, don't I? So I guess it's really useful to see how we sort of assess whether or not things work. Particularly, I guess, is a broader debate for therapy on the whole. So, does counselling work? You know, if you look at the NICE guidelines and the sort of the way that sort of values evidence, there are 6 studies that sort of begin to influence NICE. And, you know, within that, we start to say that there is only a moderate effect from our counsellors. So it's not a great impact, and there's no sort of evidence really that that's a sustained impact. And so, as counsellors, we're challenged by this notion of evidence and does what we offer work. I think probably a healthier question is, how do clients actually make what we offer work? But I guess today I'm going to be quite crude and sort of stick with this idea of does online counselling work. And it's useful sort of, I think, from you, I guess you've got kind of this experiential sort of understanding of what we mean by work. So I guess everyone's sort of sharing their own positive sort of experiences from the side of a counsellor and client. That for some people, online work can be effective. So I suppose I'm going to take this a step, talk about what I'm going to talk about now. So to give you the meta-narrative of why I'm here. I guess this presentation is really around a review of the literature that I did with an American colleague. And I'm going to give you a sense of where that review came from before actually saying, well, what we did. Because I think quite often people do literature reviews, but how comprehensive and systematic are they? I think quite often sort of we get to do these as sort of part of our studies, but we don't necessarily, we're not very explicit about what it is that we've actually looked at. Then I'm going to sort of introduce and discuss the findings of the review and consider where things might be heading. I'm very trite in this area. I realise I looked at my slides and they're very brief, so I hope you can add to that debate as well. So to present you with a bit of background, I guess, as I say, I've been a major part of this review alongside this colleague, Darcy Reynolds, from the University of Southern Indiana. And we're both kind of begun with this sort of real interest in the Online Therapeutic Alliance. So if people come across the notion of the Therapeutic Alliance, so sort of Bourdieu's sort of view that there are common factors throughout all therapeutic paradigms that consist of sort of the therapeutic bond, the therapeutic goals, and the therapeutic task. Now that's been reformulated in other sort of methods, and I think John MacLeod kind of recently sort of talked about having sort of methods within there as well. And it's really fascinating. His book on counselling skill that I recommend. But anyway, I'm straying. So I guess this sort of notion of the common factors throughout all therapeutic endeavours or therapeutic relationships is something that really interests both of us. And in particular, kind of this notion of the online therapeutic alliance. So what does it mean? So I guess both of us kind of come up with these kind of questions around whether or not online relationships are of a sufficient quality to create psychological change, which is essentially, I guess, what we all hope in some ways. Possibly. So we've been involved in putting together a very detailed systematic review solely about the Online Alliance. The Online Alliance is this sort of concept that's quite commonly correlated to successful outcomes in therapy. It's more